Denise. Denise is our captioner. We have Kate White, Leanne, Nicole, and myself. Those who might have just joined, Brian is not able to join us tonight, so I will take the minutes. And Kate also isn't able to join us tonight. We do not have quorum, and therefore we cannot deliberate or vote. However, we have lots of guests and many things to share and talk about, so it will be a very full meeting, and on this lovely day of St. Valentine's. So just for note for the attendance, I have myself and Leanne present. And again, I just would like to welcome all of our guests tonight. We have Adam and Catherine from the mobility team. They're going to be speaking shortly after just a few little updates. We have Bonnie here to give us an update as well, and Nicole, who is here from CAS, who's going to talk briefly about what her agency does. So Adrian, would you like to go first with your piece?
Thanks so much. This is Adrian through the chair. First of all, thank you to those of you who had responded to email communication back in the late fall about questions and things to include in the ADA community survey, which launched approximately 8 days ago, roughly. And we are now in the great piece of it where, you know, it's out there, but there is a very huge component of sort of either via Zoom or on the ground opportunity to do some listening sessions to get some more feedback and then ask folks to engage with the survey. This is something that the Department of Racial and Social Justice has been doing with their Public Safety for All survey, which has been out for a few months now. And I would really like to engage the membership here in that outreach, and that can look like a few different things. First of all, these listening sessions or outreach can be done via Zoom or in person or a combination of both or whatever that looks like. And really they exist to give folks a safe space to share their thoughts, experiences around inclusion and accessibility within the city of Somerville. And then we would make an ask for them to engage in the survey. Some folks choose to engage in the survey while they're participating, sort of that multitasking component if they're able to do that. I am working with our department, SOIA, Office of Immigrant Affairs, to do some language specific sessions. So folks where English is not their primary language can engage and take the survey as well. But there's real opportunity for the members of the commission to participate in these sessions, whether you're assisting RSJ with hosting these sessions and hearing what folks have to say in the safe space, or attending yourself, whatever that looks like for you. So I'm just taking a few minutes to gauge any interest from this group in participating, because we do have to allow some weeks for sort of planning and logistics and the things that come with hosting those sessions.
Hi, I'm raising my hand for the stack. This is Harriet.
Hi, Harriet.
Hi. I have to turn my phone sideways to unmute, so that's what that's about.
That's okay.
So I would love to be engaged in any way at all possible.
Sure.
Because I think obviously a variety of people with a variety of disabilities from all different groups of people is going to be really important, and reaching people, I think, is probably the biggest challenge. I myself could not actually access the survey and lost track of it when you were kind enough to send it out for our proofing in November. So that's on me. And we don't have to belabor a discussion about access, but I assume if I couldn't find it, there might be a few other people who couldn't find it who weren't visually impaired. So we'll work on that together.
Of course.
Thank
And
you.
I just saw your email, Harriet. I took a bit of a dinner break before this, but we can have a discussion about that. But what I would like to know, Harriet, if you're comfortable sharing and then others can share, or you can reach out at a later time. As I said, there are many ways we can do that. We do have the virtual component, which probably a lot of folks would feel safe about because you're in your home and you're safe. And there's always the option for in-person. So I just, Harriet, what are your feelings on that?
Oh, I think hybrid is important to offer.
Okay.
But sometimes if you have a hybrid, I suppose those who are in person may not feel quite as comfortable as those, in an equal sort of way. But I don't know what other people would consider since I'm pretty much unaffected by the visual, whether I'm in person or in Zoom, and I feel safer on Zoom just for health reasons. I have a particular propensity to want to do it I think hybrid is fair,
Right.
and makes it more accessible. So yeah, that's pretty much my thought about it. And I would love to participate in any way, just as a listener, as a speaker, whatever. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, a really important component of this is that, and I have not looked at the results that have come in so far with it being out 8 days. But what we're seeing a lot of is some folks didn't even know, the ADA division exists and that there's a commission. And so I think this is a great way for folks, whatever venue you all choose that the group feels the safest about, that they are engaging with current members of this commission and learning more about that. So it's a bigger conversation, of course. And then, as I mentioned, I am working with Soya to do some language focused sessions because there are folks who, may not, just based on culture, may not know what the ADA is and that there are resources for them in this community. So that's another avenue of it. And you're right, Harriet. We have, I think our data analysis pulled it, I can't remember the year, but there's at the very least over 7,000 people in Somerville based on the US Census that identify as having a disability. And that's a really large group considering our population. So thank you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I'm hoping, without it being a huge hassle, that somehow, since the Commission for Women and the Human Rights Commission, and if Disability Commission, our commission could be under RSJ directly, we might be found a little more easily. Let's see.
Yeah.
I'm
Great.
gonna let Bonnie speak. She has her hand raised.
Yeah, I see Bonnie's hand.
Please go right ahead, Miss Bonnie.
Through the chair, thanks. I was curious, Harriet, what your access issues were. I know when I was doing the survey, I found it pretty difficult to order things because it required a drag and drop function that was just difficult for me to maneuver because I have arthritis in my hands. And I was kind of unclear whether or not it was.
Excuse me, Adrian, can you mute?
Yeah.
You have someone just joined as a Yuko?
Yes. And
Okay.
I've muted them. And if they need assistance unmuting when Bonnie is done speaking, we can certainly do that.
No need
Sorry.
to apologize. That's fine. Please continue, Bonnie. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just curious how that worked with screen readers. Or if
Oh,
there
it
was
doesn't
something
work
else.
well. It doesn't work well. I have to confess, I only could get to the survey with sighted assistance and did read it through. And I haven't yet attempted to actually fill it out. And that I will try next. So yeah, I will try to do that next. But if you had some problems with drag and drop, I'm probably going to have some problems too, but we'll see. I can't say till I actually attempt, thanks.
Well, I'm happy to help out as well, Adrian, and I agree with what Harriet said about hybrid meetings are best, and clearly looking to reach specific communities who may not either be aware of what our role is and or need, would I'm losing my words right now. I think it's a lack of food today. Making sure that we cover multiple people and groups within the city. Leanne, you have something to add? Please go ahead.
As far as the hybrid meetings, I guess my question is, would the purpose of these meetings to be to have a large group of people all meeting at the same time, or to have an opportunity for as many people as possible to like interact with someone on the commission or someone on city staff to get assistance with the survey?
That's a great question, Leanne. So almost a little bit of both. So the real intent is to offer a safe space. So like a space where people feel like they can share openly. And then also from a health perspective, as Harriet mentioned, a lot more people feel safer, on the internet or on Zoom. And so offering a safe space for them to be able to share, and then see, that the commission is here, and maybe field some questions that way if they're curious, about membership or just knowing who you all are. And then hopefully making an ask for them to take the survey if they haven't already, and which would be optional. We wouldn't require that if they wanted to attend. But really being able to reach folks just to maybe hear from some folks who maybe, needed space to do that.
Okay, yeah. So I think if the goal is to have a space for the public to interact with each other and hear each other's contributions, then hybrid is important for that. If it's more about the public having a chance to interact with us, then it might make more sense to just have multiple options. So like some online, some in person, if we have people who are comfortable doing that, so that there's fewer technical issues to get in the way of the actual, and also this to me feels like something that would be better as something smaller, just because I don't know how many people are going to be more comfortable talking about things if it doesn't feel as public.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. That's a good perspective.
Thanks, Leanne, for your comments. Anything else, Adrian, you want to report on tonight?
Not right now. That's all I had. Thank you for that space. I know we have some guests that have other really important things to talk about. With that said, anything about the survey or outreach that you want to pass on, feel free to email me or call, and we can definitely talk about it. And Harriet, I will contact you tomorrow and we can talk about that access point that you just spoke
Okay,
of.
great.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Holly.
Oh, sure. I have a report. I'll try to go quickly. Many of things that are on here we can't accomplish tonight because we don't have the ability to vote. But one good news is that tomorrow there will be a hearing of the subcommittee for appointments. And we have 3 people being reviewed at that meeting. It is on the 15th, and let me just grab the agenda to see if it has time.
It's 6 p.m., I believe, 6 p.m.
And they're starting with the constable appointments. And then I believe the folks from this commission are in the middle of the agenda, and then there's something else at the end.
So we have Harriet, Pauline, and Deborah, and it starts at 7.
6.
Oh, I'm sorry. It said it was posted at 7. My apologies.
Starts
Um,
it
no,
starts-
I did just add it about an hour ago to the website, or requested that it be posted with the meeting as meeting materials, but I will also make sure that I send it out to the group tonight, so that if you'd like to join and listen in, you have that.
Holly, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. This is Adrian. Harriet, did you happen to get a link from GoToMeeting?
I believe I did. I believe
Okay.
I did. It came through even on my calendar.
Oh, okay.
And I'll get some assistance. GoToMeet can be a little bit difficult, but I think, obviously.
Yeah, I was asked by Hannah to check. And
Yeah.
I have to call Pauline, and I already had this conversation, but I have to call Pauline tomorrow because it didn't come to her. So we'll figure that out.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Holly.
It's okay, it's fine. Tied into that membership update is, once that process is completed and that subcommittee votes, the hopefully all 3 candidates will move forward, and not this Thursday, the following Thursday is the next full meeting of City Council, where the final votes they will approve the final commissioners. And then the process involves some training online and forms being completed, and then a swearing in. And behind the scenes, myself and Adrian, the city clerk, and some other staff within the city are working diligently to make sure that we have a process of how we go from the swearing in process to the notification of seats and the terms. And we're working diligently to have that ready before people land in those spots. And that's only because in my own experience, I didn't have a lot of that information available. So we're working on making sure everything's transparent and communicated to all of the persons who'd like to be a member of the commission. The next thing I wanted to talk about briefly was, we're asked in January to provide a list of 3 goals to RSJ. And I put together a document. It's one of the meeting materials for tonight. And it's basically, it's more than 3, but the goals are all specifically from the executive order for commissions, excuse me. And so I know we can't talk about those tonight, but going forward, we just need to look at those and agree that either in its entirety or choosing 3 of those is what we'll provide to RSJ. And
Excuse me, Holly. At some point, I had a comment about the previous thing on the appointments, but. just let me
absolutely, you know what? I can't look at a document now. I can see. Go right ahead.
Sorry, it's a little bit of a dance here. So, no, I just wanted to say, I understand the part that you all will be working on, but am I correct in that I heard that there's also some online training after the city council votes us to be in?
Yeah. Yes, there's a process. You have to take one piece is about open meeting law. One, I believe, is about conflict of interest. One of them produces a document that you have to give to the city clerk. And then there's this assignment of persons to slots or seats, of which there are 9.
Okay,
And
so, but I mean, that part is what you guys do, and what we as new appointees need to do are the documents, right? The training documents, right?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that the process was outlined clearly of what those steps are.
Yeah, good. No, I got the latter steps. I just wanted to hear about the the online training or whatever stuff too as well. Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Holly.
So regarding handicap funds, we are in the process of formalizing an agreement with the Somerville High School Scholarship Foundation. Hopefully that will be inked, I would say, before March or by early March, Adrian. It's a lot of moving parts to it. And then hopefully we'll be able to move forward with reviewing applications and get that $50,000 allotted. There's been a few meetings with IT about website accessibility. I don't really have time to go into too much details. I just like everyone to know that those communications continue, and Dan and his new team have been really fantastic, making changes on the fly and listening to those of us who have been speaking with them. And I think that's all that I can go through today. That will be helpful. I just would like to give Adam and Catherine their time now. I don't know if you have any materials or if you want to share your screen, but you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Holly. So you just bear with me one moment. Folks, we do have some presentation slides today that we're happy to send along tomorrow after we presented, but we just thought it'd be helpful to guide the conversation this evening. So I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, just bear with me one moment, just at the end of the slide deck. Would someone be able to audibly let me know that they could see the slides if for those who are looking?
I can see them, Kate.
Yes, can see the slides.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, everyone. My name is Kate White. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Planner for the city's Mobility Division. And I'm joined today by my team member, Senior Planner Adam Polinsky for the city's Mobility Division as well. We're here today to talk a little bit about kind of a 101 on what does Mobility Division do. And so we're going to go through kind of how transportation planning projects happen in our city and why we do these projects. So we thought we'd first start with all of the departments that are involved in transportation projects in our city. So we'll start first with our Infrastructure and Asset Management Office. So we have our Engineering Division and Capital Projects Division. Then we have our Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development. So that's where the Mobility Division is housed, as well as other divisions that we sometimes work with depending on the project, or who you might also interact with other projects. This includes our Economic Development Department or Division, Administration, Planning, Preservation and Zoning, Public Space and Urban Forestry, Housing and Housing Stability. We also have our Parking Department, who was formerly called Traffic and Parking and now goes by Parking Department, which has an administration division, parking and control, or parking control officers, and sign and meter crews. And then we have our Department of Public Works, who focuses on maintenance of street facilities like sweeping and snow removal, and upkeep of street amenities like benches and plastic flex posts and more. So that's all of the departments that are involved in transportation projects in our city. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about how do we work together. Delivering new street projects is a collaborative process with all of these departments. And we thought we'd start with an example, with the process for building speed humps in our city. So mobility, which is myself, Adam, and our team members, Justin, Lauren, Greg, Brad, and Viola, we identify priority streets for speed hump installations based on things like transportation safety data and community engagement. So various things we've heard, both doing outreach for projects or receiving 311 service requests. Then we come to the engineering division, and we consult with them about the feasibility of locations. Engineering then determines the budget, design, and construction of speed humps. And then our parking department works with engineering on coordinating new signage installation as speed humps are constructed. Then mobility coordinates with DPW in maintenance planning to ensure streets are still swept and snow removed. So this workflow is a little different for each type of street project, but we wanted to show an example about how all these divisions work together for different types of street projects. So we also wanted to talk a little bit about who's who in Somerville transportation in terms of committees and commissions. So our ones that really focus on policy is our City Council Committee on Traffic and Parking. Those who serve more in advisory capacity is our Pedestrian and Transit Advisory Committee, our Bicycle Advisory Committee, and you all, the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. And those who serve more in the regulatory capacity is our Traffic Commission, who vote to approve or endorse changes to parking regulations or traffic regulations, or the Traffic Board, who serves to hear appeals of Traffic Commission decisions. So that's a little bit about the committees and commissions involved in transportation planning projects in our city. And then we want to talk a little bit about why do we make changes to our streets. So citywide comprehensive plans inform our city transportation goals. So you might be familiar with the city's comprehensive plan, Summer Vision 2040, our Climate Forward Plan, our ADA Transition Plan, our Vision Zero Action Program, and currently in development is our Somerville Bicycle Network Plan. But all in all, our projects are focused on keeping people safe on our streets, improving access to public transit, and creating more sustainable transportation options for people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how do changes get made in our streets. And we've kind of organized this into 3 buckets. I'll start with the first, which is our largest kind. It's our major full depth reconstruction or capital projects. And these are our types of projects where all options are on the table. The only things that might kind of influence it are utility conflicts. So it's the telecommunications lines, electricity lines below the street surface. These types of projects often originate from major underground infrastructure needs. So it could be having to redo the whole sewer system. And they can be funded through state, city, and private funding streams. A general timeline that we've seen in our city is often more than 7 years long. And that's really from the beginning of concept development, beginnings of communications and community engagement, and then development of design to construction and full construction. And one example of this type of project is the Somerville Ave Utility and Streetscape Improvements Project that runs in Union Square. Another type of project comes through our annual pavement and sidewalk maintenance program. And so this program, which looks at ADA compliance and other factors, but it has fewer options for major changes. So unlike our major full depth reconstruction where we can completely dig up the street and move where the sidewalk is entirely, we have some more limits around being able to dramatically move that curb line. This is a data-driven program. Engineering, or Brian Postway, as you know closely, their division conducts a 3-year rolling annual survey of streets. And that really highlights streets that are, degrading in pavement or low compliance on sidewalks. And then the types of projects that come out of this program range from complete streets, and that's where we redo the sidewalks, we redo the street, to speed hump installation. And that might be on streets that aren't being totally repaved, but there's an opportunity for construction crews to install speed humps. And a general timeline for these types of projects are 3 years. And one example of this type of project is our Pearl Street Safety and Reconstruction Project. And lastly, the kind of final bucket that our projects fall into are called quick build projects. And these are the types of projects that primarily take place between existing curbs. So we can often only make changes with paint, signs, and plastic posts, but it would really fall in our maintenance and sidewalk program if we were redoing that, moving that sidewalk or redirecting that street. Sometimes these types of projects can involve traffic signals or other upgrades, and a general timeline from that kind of concept design, development, engagement to construction is 1.5 years. And one example of this is our Powder House Circle. So these are just some of the types of projects. I'm excited to hand it off to Adam, who's going to talk a little bit more about what we're working on right now.
Thanks, Kate. So a couple of these are projects that Kate described on the last slide, but I want to give a little bit more context to some of them and kind of, how we've framed things and what our role is in the project. So this slide is titled What I've Been Working On. On the left, we have an image of College Ave, and you can see the crossing islands that we've recently constructed for the crosswalks across College Ave at Kidder Ave. which is actually right near where I live. So that's a photo that I was able to take. And this College Ave was part of the annual pavement and sidewalk maintenance program. As Kate had described briefly, Holland Street and College Ave were both streets that were in pretty dire need of repaving. The sidewalks were in not great condition, so they were selected as streets to amount of upgrade. And then engineering came to us to figure out sort of what upgrades could be made. And this has sort of been an ongoing conversation, and it's been changing a little bit every year. And we've had a little bit more play to do more of the things that we want to incorporate in terms of major safety upgrades, like these crossing islands here, or bike infrastructure to create protected bicycle lanes, or things in the way of transit amenities like floating bus stops or bus lanes. And so it's changing a little bit every year, and getting closer to what we see as meeting more of our long-term goals for our streets here in Somerville. There is more work to do on College Ave. So we've essentially taken those designs that we had in mobility, handed it back to engineering so that they could construct. That construction is largely wrapping up. And now we're kind of in the phase of doing some evaluation of how some of these new elements are functioning. And I'll get into a little bit of the data that we typically collect and how that informs our decision making in a couple slides here. I also want to talk briefly about the photo on the right here, which is of a floating bus stop on Somerville Ave as part of what we affectionately call the SAUCY project, Somerville Ave Utility and Streetscape Improvements Project. That is kind of the capital all-out full construction project that Kate was describing. And that one, you know, we can really accomplish a lot of different goals in that type of project, because we are sort of fundamentally reconstructing the street from top to bottom, with all of the sewer upgrades underneath, all of the gas work that needs to happen, and then all of the sort of long-term goals that we want to meet in regards to the types of infrastructure that we're envisioning for people driving, people walking, people biking, and people taking the bus.
This is Pauline. I have a question. Are you doing anything with Highland Avenue around that area, the Davis Square area?
At this time, we do not have anything planned for Highland Ave on the approach to Davis Square, other than a signal timing project that is currently in the pipeline. So there will be some minor changes to how the signal timing works. And we will be also incorporating a bike lane on sort of, I guess technically it is Highland Ave actually, on the approach into Davis Square, but it's really just the last 100 feet or so into the intersection. And so in terms of like that particular piece of Highland Ave, that is the only project that we have on our plate at this point. So there really isn't going to be a lot in terms of changes to the street, but if you're walking through Davis Square or driving or biking, and hopefully taking the bus too, because it is really intended, the goal of the project is to get buses through a little bit more quickly, and also make it safer for pedestrians. You might notice some of those changes later this year.
Get rid of those brick sidewalks.
Yeah, so they actually, we started, I'm sure you guys are aware, we did take care of some of the ramps late last season, a few months back. But yes, the sidewalks, I believe, are going to be incorporated into one of the upcoming streets packages, but I'm not sure if that's going to be a this year thing or a next year thing yet. Brian would have more information on that.
Oh, Adam?
Yes.
Can you explain what is a floating bus stop?
Sure. Yeah, so a floating bus stop, you can see it in the image here. The goal of a floating bus stop is to actually allow a bus to stop in the travel lane without having to conflict with bikes. So it gives a dedicated waiting area where you can kind of see that bench and that fence where people are waiting for the bus. The bus, doesn't have to pull over. It just stops right in the travel lane to pick up passengers, but it also doesn't have to stop in the bike lane. So bikes kind of go behind it. They go in that space between, but it's still, it kind of separates all of the different users versus kind of putting them all in the same space and creating a potential conflict. So.
And Adam,
Wow,
if I
Pauline
could,
that's
again.
great.
oh, I'm
This is
just gonna,
Pauline again. Oh, go ahead.
no, thank you, Pauline. I'm just gonna add to Adam's description that I often imagine it as it's like taking the sidewalk and you're putting it right closer. So again, just like Adam described, the bus doesn't have to pull over, which can cause sometimes a bit of a delay, as well as harder for the bus to pull totally straight up against the sidewalk, which again, is the aim is to improve accessibility getting on and off the bus because you're not having that potential triangular gap in between if the bus hasn't pulled all the way up. And then it's easier for the bus to continue on and it doesn't have to merge back into traffic. So that's how it improves some of the bus service. And then as Adam describes, when there's a bike lane, the bike lane can go behind. So there's not that point where the bus and bikes are crossing. And then there's dedicated space for people waiting at the bus stop, which sometimes it can be benches or it can be bus shelters. And then there's still the sidewalk on the exterior of the bus lane, or sorry, the bike lane, so that people who are just walking and not stopping at the bus don't have to kind of move around people waiting for the bus.
Yeah, but
Well,
where are you going to have the room for all this? I mean, the streets are only so wide.
Yeah, it is a struggle. We have very narrow streets here in Somerville. You're right. We manage essentially any street that we have that we're able, that we have parking and at least room for a bike lane next to it. You can generally make that setup work because the floating bus stop itself is essentially as wide as the parking lane. But in fact, it saves space and can, we're always trying to balance a lot of needs, right? And that does include parking. Often our projects do come at the cost of some existing street parking, but these floating bus stops, rather than needing, 100 feet for the bus to actually pull off and pull up to a stop, you really only need the room for the length of the actual bus. So you can, in fact, in some cases, be more efficient with that space and preserve things like parking while still providing a better stop experience and a bike lane too, potentially.
I'm putting my hand in the stack. I don't know who's next.
I think you are, Harriet.
Okay, great. I have a few different questions. Thank you for clarifying the large projects, the medium projects, and the quick projects.
Mm-hmm.
I am blind. I've lived behind the Somerville Theater for most of my life since 1983. And I am curious to ask, when was there planning and any chance for discussion about those wonderful traffic islands? And I'll explain why I'm asking that, but just wanted to know, how long were they in the planning? Like the one on Cameron Avenue, or ones on Cameron and on Holland Street.
Sure. Yeah. So that is really a pretty new element that we've just started to roll out on College Ave and on Holland Street. So,
but also on Cameron, it's also on Cameron too. Cameron,
right? Holland Street you're right. It's the intersection of Holland at Cameron. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my question is, I think it's really unfortunate that you didn't consult with some visually impaired folks, because I know these islands make things safer for pretty much everybody. However, because we weren't consulted, we need more of those, even higher, if possible, yellow bumps, like 4 or 5 feet before it goes down, because that gradual descent, which is so perfect for a wheelchair, I have walked into the intersection, not quite aware that I was already there until I was there. Do you see what I mean? because I think it's only 2 or 3 feet you have of the bump
Right.
strips. Do you know how much it is as far as the
Yeah,
bump
I
strip?
think they're 2 feet wide, I believe. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't know if that is a post Band-Aid thing you can do, but I would feel a hell of a lot safer if you could do that.
That is great feedback, Harriet. And yeah, honestly, we like the visually impaired community is one that we've had a hard time reaching in the past. And so we're still very much learning, and I'm totally willing to admit that.
Hey,
And so
listen,
that kind
you
of
can hit
feedback
me,
is super
you
helpful.
can, you can hit me up anytime because
I will.
And
I
me
will
and
take
me
you up on
too.
that.
and Pauline as well. Yeah. So here's the other thing. I mean, I'll just mention historically that when we started having ramps, I was thrilled. And I realized it happened because of the Vietnam vets and their spinal cord injuries. And we had so
Mhm.
many more people. I mean, let's forget about the mamas and the strollers. But anyway, my difficulty initially was that just like now, I would hit a nice, even curve down to a flat area. Oh, it's a driveway, at least if it were in a residential area, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I'm having a similar deja vu about this particular situation. So I appreciate hearing about the fact that it was fairly recent that you guys put the traffic islands in. And from others, I've understood that there's some issues in Davis Square regarding wheelchair usage, but I'm not quite sure whether that has to do with the traffic islands or something else. I don't know. Could someone speak to that? Who's in our meeting?
I'm just gonna interject here for a second. I appreciate everything that you've added, Harriet, and everyone on these subjects. We have about 10 minutes left for our mobility team, and I'm not sure how many more slides you may have. If you'd like the conversation to keep going where it is, I'm interjecting just as just to let you know where we are time wise.
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we get through? We
Um,
only have a couple more slides, so
Okay.
why don't I just wrap those up, and then happy to continue the conversation around any questions anyone else has.
Thank you.
All right. So here's a couple more slides we have of projects that the mobility team has been a part of. So on the left here, you have a photo of a new Green Line train, which is awesome. The Green Line extension, which is a capital project, and even more so than Somerville Ave, this is really kind of the all-out project that isn't even just a city project alone. It's really managed by the MBTA, by the state. The federal government is involved to some degree, at least in funding of a project of this magnitude. And so that, we really are only a piece of the puzzle in that one. There are hundreds of folks involved, from advocacy all the way up to, like I said, the federal government and everything in between involved in a project of that magnitude. But is, no less of success and just we're really happy that this has been able to get to where it is, but that project that's super impactful like that, it does take, this has been a long time in the making, and so I guess you could say on sort of the other end of the spectrum is another project that we completed fairly recently and on a much shorter timeline, which is at Powder House Circle. Powder House Circle is an intersection that has been notoriously dangerous, and in fact has seen some of the highest crash rates of any city-owned intersection for a long time. There's been a lot of energy from residents and stakeholders in the area alike to do something about the mess that used to be Powder House Circle. And so in fairly short order, which really is the main benefit of these quick build type projects, we can't do everything we want, unfortunately, but we can make pretty substantial improvements on a much faster timeline than a lot of the other projects we've just described. We were able to go out and significantly reduce the amount of driving space, which slows cars down. It makes it a little bit more orderly, shorten the crossing distances for pedestrians, use some of that extra space to provide a bike lane around the edge, and just sort of things make it work a little bit better and less confusing. So that's an example of the quick build type project that we've been working on. Kate, you can go to the next slide. And just as we're always looking for feedback and trying to improve and knowing that there's always more work to be done with things like the crossing islands, as we were just as Harry was just speaking to, we also want to look at the data to understand that how are we actually achieving our goals with the projects we're rolling out. And so that's essentially what Vision Zero is, the sort of proclamation that the city has made of getting to zero traffic fatalities or serious deaths in Somerville. And on one hand, we've been seeing a decrease in terms of the overall number of fatal and serious injuries over the last 10 years, which is an encouraging sign. And we'd like to think it means we're doing something right. But we haven't been able to, the number of fatalities has remained sort of stubborn in that we've had at least one over the last 4 years, which really makes it hard for us to sort of cope with that when we're trying to weigh up and balance a lot of different things, and really continues to give us we really want to focus our emphasis on improving safety, and making sure that number does eventually get to zero, hopefully sooner than later.
This is
And then-
Pauline again. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, he was going to
You
finish
good?
the presentation, Pauline. He was going to finish the
Oh,
presentation.
okay. I
Yeah,
thought you were
sorry, just
through.
give me a couple more minutes. I'm almost done with my spiel. And then lastly, I just wanted to show the group some data that we collected at a number of different locations. So we're showing photos here of Central Street at Willoughby Street, of Sycamore Street at Jerome Street, of Lowell Street at Alpine Street, and of Morrison Ave at Pearson Road. And what we have is a metric, and that we did just install speed humps on all of those streets. And so we went and collected data.
Happy Valentine's Day, buddy.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, Manu. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so in terms, what we're seeing here is that, for example, on Central Street, 40% of cars that we measured on an average day were going over 25 miles per hour, over the speed limit on Central Street. And after we installed the speed humps, that number was down to 9% of vehicles. So from 39 down to 9. At Sycamore, we saw 50% of vehicles speeding. That went down to 4 after the installation of the speed humps. And then similar findings at Lowell and Morrison, from 42% to 7%, and from 33% to 6%. So we're seeing that these are effective, and the greatest opportunity for someone to actually get hurt, seriously hurt or killed on our streets is due to speeding. And so if we're reducing the ability for people to speed, we're making progress towards our ultimate goal. So we were encouraged to see some of this data and hope to continue to roll these types of treatments out in the future.
Excuse me, Adam. Someone has a lot of background noise that just recently got added. I don't know if people wouldn't mind putting themselves on mute until they need.
It might be Manu. I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please continue.
And I think with that, I can turn it back over to Kate to wrap.
Thanks, Adam, and thank you everyone for giving us this time and space to talk about our work. I just want to, before we jump into discussion, if you're interested in staying up to date on different transportation planning projects in the area and you like getting emails, we have a monthly mobility newsletter that kind of gives you 4 to 5 highlights of the different transportation planning projects in the area. And so I'll make sure to share that link when we're in discussion, as well as share it with Adrian and Holly to follow up afterwards. But that's in case you're interested to learn more. You can always send your questions to our mobility division at transportation@somervillema.gov by email. And we also have another tool called Summer Voice, which is a web page that shows all of the different developing projects in the city or planning projects. And so you can see transportation ones, land use, economic development, just another way to kind of peruse what is going on in the city. So with that, we really want to give space to any questions, comments. And again, this was really just to provide some background, but we're happy to talk anytime, whether it's about specific projects or different transportation safety issues.
And one more thing I'd like to plug is that the mobility team is also working on publishing its first work plan in the efforts of sort of bringing a little bit of order to the chaos that is the number of requests that we get every year for various types of projects, but also increase transparency and give everyone in Somerville a look at our plan for the year and the work we do and what we're hoping to accomplish. So we'll definitely make sure that the commission has an ability to review that and can discuss the appropriate way to make that happen as well. But that in terms of upcoming projects or upcoming work products, I think that's one that the commission would definitely be interested in seeing.
Thank you, Adam and Kate. I just want to, this is Holly. I just want to thank you both for being here today. I know there's a few people who had hands raised or would like to speak. And I greatly appreciate you coming here tonight. The goal of having and doing your overview, the goal that the commission is working towards is being involved, not just from the ability of sending emails or subscribing to your newsreels, but to actually be there before the planning process when things are first being discussed. I think you had us as an advisor capacity, which is great. But we really look forward to having some communication long before things might be shown on your Summer Voice site. And as Harriet says, involving us, those of us who are blind, those of us who have hearing impairments, those of us who have mobility challenges, you know, we all bring different aspects to the table. And I think that would only help your projects be stronger. So maybe offline, we can talk a little bit more about how we can see that come together. And I just had one other question. Summer Voice, is that built on an accessible platform? Can someone with a screen reader go through and access the information that's there? Because I know some of the pages that are more modern do have those requirements in them, and some of the pages that have been in existence have challenges where they're not yet accessible, and there are projects going on. But do you happen to know if your page is?
So it's, to answer your question about Summer Voice is it's a engagement platform that we actually contract through a vendor for, who has certain requirements they must meet to ensure that the product is accessible, as well as a variety of other things. So I'm happy to double check what are their specific specifications, but we contracted for that reason, to ensure that things stay up to date. It's connected but separate from our main city website, and has a dedicated customer service team that we reach out to when we find any issues come up. So actually, if we get any feedback that things aren't working well, we can always send it back to that customer service team.
I'm very happy to hear that was part of the contracting process, was to make sure that it could be accessible. Bonnie, Harriet, hold on just one second. I know Bonnie had her hand up. I'm not sure if anyone else did. We have just a few minutes left.
Sure, through the chair, thank you. Two things. I'll go with the accessibility of the presentations first, because that was just talked about. I know that I have brought this up before. It's not accessible, especially to this group, to give presentations without sharing slides ahead of time. I mean, we have two people in this meeting, for instance, who are blind. And that's a problem too with the presentations that are done soliciting community feedback. And I'm dubious about Summer Voice being accessible, but I know that the platforms used during those the community meetings are not. There's a lot of things done with sticky notes on a separate browser, which is difficult to open, hard to follow, because there's things being talked about. At the same time, you're expecting people to go to another page and interact with that. And these aren't new things. Like, I've been bringing them up for, I think, 2 years now. So I think, you know, to Holly's point, getting the commission involved before that point makes a lot of sense, but the commission isn't everybody in the community with disabilities. And I think the engagement and the feedback would be a lot better if you put more effort into listening to the fact that how things are being presented are not accessible. The other thing I wanted to touch on is it said that there were few options for changing the curb line. And I guess I'm just curious as to why that is, because like that's hard to do in a quick build project, but if you're saying that's a problem in the longer term things, how do we ever get the city to be fully accessible?
Adam, do you want me to, I could answer point 1 and then do you want to do point 2?
I'm going to interrupt for just 1 second because I couldn't understand what you said, Bonnie. Were you saying that there are limited ways to do this or that there are multiple?
No, the presentation said there are few options for changing the curb line.
So there
And
are
that was
only
put-
a few.
Yes, and that was
Okay.
put under the section for doing the large scale projects that were not quick builds.
Okay.
That were the
Thank
more
you.
permanent things.
Please go ahead, Adam.
Okay, Kate wanted to answer first.
Yep.
I just want to
Okay.
say thank you very much for that feedback. Our team has been working both with other community engagement space specialists in the city, as well as actually participating in a regional body that does virtual, in-person and hybrid community engagement. And we're trying to learn what are some of the best ways to make both more accessible, inclusive, and how do we navigate this new space of hybrid opportunities? And so I really appreciate that feedback. We're trying to kind of talk both internally and with these external partners of how do we create best practices that then people experience similar things in those meetings. So if we are having a virtual meeting, are these components always shared first, or how do people communicate about them? And then how is that discourse followed up? One thing that we're exploring internally is actually trying to, instead of all the pressure being on one particular public meeting, is just create more opportunities. And so that depending on someone's comfort, ability, or need or desire, they can participate. And whether that's standing next to someone as they're walking their kid back and forth to school, or if it's meeting someone in the middle of the grocery store and trying to share information about a project, or if it's in this virtual capacity. So just thank you very much for that. And I just really appreciate your continued advocacy to make this more accessible. Would you like to hear Adam's comment first, or do you want to answer?
I would love to address that really quickly. I just, especially in the time of COVID, like it's not over. It still exists for many of us. People have already brought up health concerns and wanting to have virtual options. There are many people with disabilities, and I assume many other people as well, who it's not an option to do an in-person meeting. And so the continued lack of access virtually is an even bigger problem. And I understand wanting to have people feel like it's an experience and wanting to engage people in different ways. But a very basic thing is sharing materials ahead of time so that people who have access needs and need more time to be able to absorb the materials can do that and show up and participate in the meetings. Like that doesn't need a study group. You have this commission that has shared that information repeatedly with the city. It's pretty basic access, and it continues to not be done, including in this meeting today. So that's all.
No, thank you, Bonnie, and I appreciate it. Adam, do you want to field the second point or question?
Yes, and so I'm trying to recall exactly what the slide said, but to clarify for the full depth reconstruction projects, we do have opportunities to move the curb. So anything is on the table for a major capital reconstruction project. An example of that is Somerville Ave. Central Street is another more recent example. That one's currently under construction. And so it is a cost thing, but it is very much possible in those types of projects. And if there is any nuance to it, it's just that we have to be careful about where the curb can go based on where underground utilities are, which was actually something we were running into a little bit of a problem with when we were designing the Spring Hill project and like Central Street in particular. So we just have to be cognizant of that. We simply can't move it where we want, but without, potentially moving other utilities, but it is very much an option on those in those bigger capital and full depth reconstruction projects. So I apologize if that wasn't clear.
No, Adam, I think it's in regards to why there's fewer curb, like ability to move the curb as much in the annual pavement and sidewalk maintenance program.
This is Bonnie. Sorry, I saw it in the different section. That's my mistake. But it is something that I have encountered a lot of pushback to when we've talked about like moving the curb around trees and doing other things like that to provide more access. So, but my apologies for seeing it in the wrong place. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, this is Harriet. I have input for you, Kate, or for the commission, or for your department, and also concerning the curb business. So regarding accessibility, you could mention to your contract people, have you had a visually impaired person who uses, and I'll give you the two names, VoiceOver for iPhone or Mac computers. It's called VoiceOver software. And for Android or PCs, it's called Job Access with Windows, or JAWS. So, I mean, I'm skilled enough to beta test, you know, I could just go to the Summer Voice and test it personally for you. And the thing is, unless a person has a beta tester, they can't know. Believe me, they just can't know. You know what I mean? Because unfortunately, I learned from working with Dan Moore, who's our key administrator and was sole administrator until January this year, that what happens is to make sites accessible, they put what are called widgets in other words, little fixes. But the problem with the little fixes is sometimes they make it accessible in one way and totally inaccessible in another way. So just, you know, use me. I mean, I can have Holly put my number in the chat, or I can call you at work. So that's one thing. And then thank you, Kate, for giving me that chance to add that in for whatever it's worth. And then I wanted to speak about the limited curb cut options. I think, Brian, you already addressed the issue of running into the issues with the electrical. And I was just at, where was I? Near Tufts. I can't remember the number. It's on Boston Ave. So here's the deal. Well, actually it happens to me right here. It's at Buena Vista and Meacham Road near my home. And I don't think there's a light pole right next to it in my case. When you have an apex, which I only learned that what I was having problems with was an apex. For me as a blind cane user, were I to use the ramp at the corner of Meacham and Buena Vista, let my feet follow the ramp, it sends me right across Meacham, and I live on the right-hand side of Meacham. So I have to do a little roundabout thing where I have to find a long cut shortcut so that I don't use that curb cut. So and the one on the Boston Ave is to get across to the Somerville community acupuncture thing. That actually may be in Medford. I'm not sure. Anyway, the problem is, can you sort of see the dilemma? Like, oh yes, we can't just move a stoplight, but at the same time, even though there may only be 7,000 people, of which there may only be 500 people seriously visually impaired, I'm glad I ain't dead yet.
I'm gonna have to ask us to table the rest of the conversation.
Sure. Thank you.
I think I appreciate your feedback and everyone's comments tonight. I do want to go back to my original request, which was how we can work together on a regular basis ahead of these, be more aware of when plannings or ideas are coming up, not just as a member of the community, but as the commission. And we can talk more about that offline. But I would really like to recommend that you provide us some days or times, and we can maybe give you some particular locations that we'd like to walk with you during those times. Some very specific, this location, these are the issues, and be able to have people like Harriet, myself, or other people who can demonstrate what the issues are. Either, clearly we'd love to see those things corrected, but also as the educational purposes. So going forward, those things, they won't be designed that way, just so that you can, there's always two lanes, right? There's the proactive lane, which I like to drive on the whole time. So we sort of get things right early. And then there's the, okay, but we got in tandem, correct things that maybe weren't done proactively or need repair. So is that something you'd be willing to work with us to sort of collaborate on?
I think Holly, I think we're always interested in doing those kinds of things. So happy to, when it comes to some of those specific things, that's where that collaboration with engineering is really critical for us. Because some of those questions, again, that's where they check the feasibility or have very specific reasons of why something might be like this and not this. And so happy to follow up more offline to kind of explore some options and then see how we can pull in engineering.
Well, that'd be great. We can definitely talk offline. I just wanted to bring it up at the meeting so other commissioners would understand some of my ideas. And certainly our desire to physically be on the ground in these areas that are problematic, as well as the next project and what you're thinking of to physically be on the street. So I'm gonna thank you both very much for your time. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting and of course provide public comment or ask questions. A lot of what was going to be done in the last half hour is going to have to be tabled because we can't vote on it. So we may have some time later if you're available, if you can hang in with us to answer some more questions for us. Totally understand if you can't, but I'd just like to open that up to you.
I really appreciate that. Unfortunately, I had not eaten any dinner or anything prior to this and had committed to having some Valentine's dinner with my husband. So if that's okay, but happy
no,
again, like we see
absolutely.
this as like an ongoing dialogue. And just like you said, we want to be more connected so that as projects even get thought of, it's like getting to talk, and so we don't see this at the end at all of having this dialogue.
Yep. I agree. So thank you both. I'm going to turn it over to
Thank you very much for your
Bonnie.
time.
Thank
Thank
you.
Yeah,
you.
have
Have
a
a good
lovely
night.
Valentine's evening. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Have a good
First,
night.
I'd like to thank Bonnie, not just for being here tonight, but for all the years that you put in as a member of the commission, especially as the chair. You finished up in December at the end of the month, and I wasn't able to thank you in January and for all that you have done and continue to do. So I just would like to, on behalf of all the commission and the residents, thank you for everything. And now that I've said that, you have the floor to talk about the meeting that you went to.
Chair Simeone.
You're a little soft, Bonnie. I'm not sure what that's.
Is this better?
Is that Holly?
Right.
Can you hear? It's still a little soft, but try.
Let me see. All right, well, I'll just try projecting as much as I possibly can.
That's good. That's much
Thank
better.
you.
That's much better.
Great.
Much better.
Bonnie Dennis, she, her, former commissioner. At that last meeting in December, Adrian Pomeroy brought up that, that there was a city meeting that they wanted representation from the commission, and I offered to go to it. That was on the home ARP allocation plan, and ARP is the American Rescue Plan. So there was a very small pool of money that was set aside for sorry, I'm trying to find the exact wording, to provide homelessness assistance and supportive services. And HUD oversees these funds, and that's housing and urban development. So the federal government oversees the funds. They give them to the city comes up with a plan, and then the federal government has to approve that plan. So there, like I said, there was $1.5 million for very narrow purposes. And it's allocated for some specific groups. That's people who are experiencing homelessness or at high risk of being homeless, people who are experiencing domestic violence, a couple others, and then people with disabilities fall into this category that's kind of a catch-all of not enough to require services on your own, but makes things harder to access housing. So the meeting was run by the Office on Housing Stability in Somerville, and there were a lot of local nonprofit directors and staff members that attended, and I attended as well. And the discussion was what to do in terms of submitting a plan. The plan has not, well, the plan has not been approved at this point. It may have been submitted, but it has not yet gone to public comment. That is supposed to happen sometime in February, and that would be where commission members could chime in if you have anything to add. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what the plan they came up with was and my recommendations. They decided that the best use of the funds, since there are not a lot of them, is to have the various agencies work together to create a specific team to coordinate services in the city. So people from the Office of Housing Stability, people from the Somerville Housing Authority, people from the Somerville school system that work to prevent homelessness with the kids in Somerville schools, CAS, which Nicole is here from this evening, some organizations that work with people experiencing domestic violence, and they want to use these funds to specifically hire more staff to create a team that can talk together on a set schedule and say, like, we have these resources to share, or we have these people looking for services. They don't quite fit what we can provide them, but maybe somebody else here can take care of them. And my suggestion was to use some of those funds to do staff training on how to work with people with disabilities. I myself am low income, and while I have not experienced homelessness, I have experienced a lot of housing insecurity and struggle accessing accessible housing. So I have a lot of personal experience to draw from there. And some of the suggestions that I made were making sure that staff of the various agencies know what accommodations are available to people with disabilities. For example, if you have a mobility impairment and you're using a Section 8 voucher, you can get a higher payment standard to be put in an accessible unit, even if there are only market rate units that are available at that time, which isn't something many staff know, and it's not something that they tend to share proactively. Something else is that there's usually a limit on how long you're allowed to search for housing before they give the voucher away. But if you have, Holly, I can see your face looking horrified, which it is horrifying as a general concept. But for people with disabilities, it means that you're kind of like, you have an extra struggle, because if you're looking for wheelchair accessible housing or housing that can have visual alarms if you're deaf, like, you might need more than 2 months to search for that. And that's an accommodation that you're legally allowed, but people have to know that they can help you get that accommodation. Another thing is home modifications. Very few people know that you're allowed, like they have to allow you to make reasonable modifications to a unit. And if there are more than 10 units in a building, then the landlord is responsible for paying for those. But even if there are fewer, you are allowed to make those modifications. So other things that households might need, like there's rules about couples sharing bedrooms, but people with disabilities might need more space to accommodate that, might not be able to share a bedroom. And right now the forms just state that to get a second bedroom as a couple, you need to have the space just to house medical equipment. But there are other things that might impact that. And again, these are things that an accommodation can be made for if staff are trained to know that that's a thing they can do. More proactive case management for people who have anxiety, for people with executive dysfunction, so that instead of expecting you to on your own show up at the exact right time, having somebody checking in to make sure that you've got everything you need. And a thing we've talked about this evening, making sure things are available in alternative formats, having Braille, having ASL interpreters when required, having audio of forms, or if somebody wants to speak with a person virtually to fill out a form together. Like there's a lot of things that don't require a lot of money and just require some knowledge and care that I think a little bit of training could go a long way in helping people with disabilities access housing and maintain it. So those are my suggestions. Like I said, there should be a public comment sometime in February or March. And if folks have other ideas, I'm sure they'd be open to hearing them. And if folks have questions, I can try to answer them.
Harriet, am I on stack?
Go ahead, Harriet.
Yeah, I just wondered, how would the meeting be named so we could recognize it? You know, or would you put us in touch with it, or, you know, like that? Like,
I see.
Adrian,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but as soon as Bonnie said about the public meeting, I realized, and I was under the assumption that those that attended that same meeting, Bonnie did, that Paul would have sent this, but I'm not sure he did. The public meeting was posted today, so I have that information, which I'm happy to share, but I didn't know if we wanted to take I can do that now, and then we can share it out in various forms.
it was posted today or it happened today?
No, it was posted today. I'm sorry.
yay!
This
Sorry.
is Bonnie.
Proactive.
That hasn't been shared with us.
Yeah, and I saw it and I was like, oh, he must have sent this to all those people who went to that meeting. I could not attend that meeting, so but then he's like, here, and then I just read it. He's like, here you go. And I was like, oh, so thank you, Bonnie, for that, tap. I was like, wait a minute. So if you don't mind, so it is saying that it will happen virtually. It looks like on Zoom at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, February 23rd. And that they will accept. So you can go to the public meeting and verbally give your comments as Bonnie, public comment. If you can, they will also be accepting written comments from Friday, February 24th through March 17th.
Can you put that link in the comments in the
So
in the
this is
chat
a
box?
file he sent me. I think I can put the file to be downloaded in the chat, and then we can email it out, Holly. And then I know there's probably more commentary on this, why that I can find the link from, hopefully. to see where. it's-
Thank you for sharing. Go ahead, Bonnie, Harriet. I'm sorry I interrupted your conversation.
This is Bonnie. No, that's great. Thank you, Adrian, for sharing that. I was hoping that he'd send it to us, but and I didn't have a chance to check the city calendar today, so that's super helpful.
All right, let's see. if
Harriet,
I
did you
can-
have more?
Oh, I was just asking what the name of the meeting was, that's all.
Yeah. So I think,
Hearing on whatever. I'll see it in the email, that's fine.
and
So I
Frank
dropped
had
the
shared-
PDF in the chat, so.
And it looks like Frank also dropped the URL to the page online,
Yeah, I can check that.
and that seems to
Yeah,
open also.
that is the link for the meeting.
So now we have both. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Frank.
Harriet, were you asking a question?
Oh, no, I'm set. I think I'm set now. Or if I had one, I forgot. It's okay.
Anyone else have any questions or comments for Ms. Dennis?
I do.
Go right ahead. Hi, Mona. You.
Okay. My question is, how can housing, if my brothers want to live in a house, we can live in it together with her girlfriend, my brother's girlfriend. Her name is Tatiana, and she's really nice, and we can always have a nice bedroom together, and maybe have a TV in our room so we can watch some sports games.
Mona, do you currently live with your brother now?
He's living in Sacramento, California.
So your question was about how yourself, your brother, and his girlfriend could live together in housing that tied right to what Bonnie was talking about.
You have subsidized, I guess. I'm sorry.
Nope, go right ahead. I'm just trying to clarify what you said.
Yeah. Where do you, this is Harriet. Where do you live?
I live in Alexandria, Virginia.
Oh,
But my
Virginia.
mom passed away, so just me and my dad.
I see.
I'm sorry to hear your mom passed away. This is housing in Somerville, Massachusetts.
Which,
But there might be somebody in Alexandria who could help you. Like an office on housing stability, or there might be other agencies there, but I'm not familiar with them.
Mona, would it be helpful if myself and Adrian reached out to you with some local resources where you live? Is what we talk about in our commission certainly is across the United States, but is very specific to Somerville, Massachusetts. So it may be important for you to have the connections to where you live for those resources.
Okay.
You're always welcome to come to a public meeting. It doesn't matter where you live. You're always welcome to ask questions. I would in no way discourage you. I would love for you to keep doing that. I think what Bonnie and I and others just want to make sure is that you're getting the information that is specific to where you live that can help you.
Okay. It sounds nice.
Well, I know we all would love to help. we all help each other here and across the community. So thank you for
Yeah.
asking your question.
Do we have contact?
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Miss Bonnie? I'm going to let our next guest speak, which is Nicole. Nicole, is it Ebret, or could you pronounce your name for me? I apologize.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. And thank you, everyone, members of the commission, for having me this evening. My name is Nicole Eichbrett, and I use she, her pronouns.
Do you have any, do you want to share your screen, or do you want to just, the floor is yours. Let us know what you need. And I know we had talked about 10 minutes, but you probably have more like 15 or 20 if you'd like.
Yeah, that sounds great. And in light of what Bonnie was saying earlier about accessibility, I apologize if I did not send my materials within the time frame to the commission to make sure that it was part of the agenda. Holly, I think I looped back to you last Thursday, but I'm not sure, for instance, if it's a full business week when materials are often submitted. So I do have a slideshow, but if it's going to be more accessible for commissioners and members of the public to just listen to me speak at a very high level, I'm happy to do that instead. And then perhaps my materials can be included in the follow-up package after the meeting.
That's my mistake. If you sent it out that I didn't forward them, I apologize. But I think if you don't mind showing the presentation and then not just talking about the slides, but really explaining what's visually on the slides, that would be very helpful for some of our members.
Got it.
To share screen or?
Yes, it does look like I have permission to do that. So just give me one moment. And so thanks for your flexibility on this.
And I'm going to look right now in my email to see if I have that, and I can forward it now while you're doing your piece.
Okay. Oh, my laptop is freezing. Okay. Okay. Again, and my sincere apologies if this is also maybe a slide design that's a bit too busy, but I'll work with Holly and other members of the commission to make sure that you all have these materials. But this is a presentation about CAS, the Community Action Agency of Somerville. And we're a nonprofit in the City of Somerville's anti-poverty agency. Our headquartered office is in Union Square, Somerville, and we have been serving Somerville's low-income residents for more than 40 years. And I work at CAS as the Director of Community Organizing and Advocacy. And so my presentation tonight is meant to be an overview of CAS's anti-poverty programs, and then more specifically what our community organizing program seeks to do, and our interest in making sure that residents with disabilities here in Somerville know about our programming and can feel invited to get engaged, and that we can be supporting tenants as well. So this second slide is our mission. So CAS has been the federally designated anti-poverty agency serving Somerville, Massachusetts since 1981. And our organization's mission is to help local families and individuals achieve financial security while working to eliminate the root causes of economic injustice. And I know that's very nonprofit jargon, so don't worry, I will get into more of what this actually looks like on the ground. But as an organization, our vision is for Somerville, a city where no one lives in poverty, where we support each other through strong community structures, and where the opportunity to thrive is a right and lived experience for every resident. So in terms of the programs that we offer at CAS, we have 4 primary anti-poverty programs. The first one is our Head Start preschool program. So CAS actually administers the Head Start program for the cities of Somerville and Cambridge. So we have several classrooms between both cities, and we enroll hundreds of students. I don't know the exact number, but I believe this year it's more than 200 students, from low income families and households, in this free preschool program that also provides comprehensive wraparound services. Our second program at CAS is the VITA tax preparation program. So folks may be familiar, VITA is a federally funded tax program that helps low to moderate income residents file their taxes for free. And last week, CAS began its appointments for the new tax season. And so this program is actually open to any Massachusetts resident. So you can contact CAS and make an appointment for us. And I believe this year that the tax appointments return to being in person at our Union Square office. Our third program, which is just for Somerville residents, is our housing advocacy program. And this program provides individual case management to households around rental assistance, eviction advocacy. So if you've received an eviction notice, or perhaps you're already in the court eviction process, and other supports such as public benefits assistance and longer term economic stability. So if the housing advocacy program kind of works on the individual household level, what we do in the community organizing and advocacy program, so that's the fourth and final program at CAS, is attempt to work with tenants and households more on the collective community level. And we really seek to work alongside residents on broader systemic change within our city. So on this next slide, I've kind of outlined our values within the CAS community organizing program. And as I mentioned, we seek to work with residents to create systemic change. So our first value, I have a little icon of a house, and the text next to it says housing justice equals housing as a human right for all. And so that is really one of our guiding values. And, not only fighting for affordable housing, right, but also housing that is safe and dignified and in the communities that we call home and accessible, right? That's very clearly where our work intersects with the commission. Our second value, there's an image of a light bulb, and the text next to it says that anyone can be a leader and we honor lived experiences. So, leadership development is really core to our work at CAS as well. We really want to work with any resident in Somerville who may or may not think of themselves as a leader. And it's really through our lived experiences and our stories that we can find our voice and then use that alongside other neighbors' voices to make change. And then our third value is an image of kind of cartoon people connected in a circle. And the value states that residents who are most impacted by housing injustice and oppression are the leaders of our campaigns and movement. So that is really a value we see connected to equity and making sure, again, that people who are impacted by racial justice, economic injustice, ableism, all sorts of oppressions in our society are the leaders in our work. So in terms of what our organizing actually looks like in Somerville, this slide kind of has multiple icons as well. The first one, which has the image of a book, is tenants' rights and advocacy. So we do a lot of education on tenants' rights, and we work alongside Somerville residents, renters specifically, in public, private, and inclusionary housing who feel like their rights might be violated. And none of the CAS organizers are lawyers. I will be very clear about that. But we do educate ourselves. We take trainings and professional development. We also work very closely with our colleagues in the other CAS programs and externally, like at the Office of Housing Stability and other partners, lawyers as well, to help tenants advocate for themselves if their rights are being violated. The second bucket of work that we do, as I mentioned, is leadership development. And this image has kind of two people next to each other with like a bubble talking. So what this means again is that we work intentionally with renters to organize campaigns that might prevent their displacement from Somerville, and residents who want to work on broader campaigns for change. So policies and budget funding, the types of structures that impact all Somerville residents. We also do campaigns. This image has 3 fists raised up in the air, one of them holding a pencil. And, a lot of our campaigns are about challenging and building power for the community. So some of our campaigns really center tenants, again, who are at risk of being displaced from Somerville because of rent hikes or their building being sold. And we have rallied and mobilized the community to fight back against abusive landlords. And we have also organized a number of demonstrations and advocacy efforts to make sure that the city council and the mayor's office are furthering tenants' rights and putting investments in affordable housing. And finally, that last bucket of work that we do, this image has 2 hands shaking each other, is uniting our community. So CAS really seeks to build our local movement as one that's multiracial, multicultural, multi-class. Again, really bringing residents of all backgrounds under this belief that housing can and must be a human right in Somerville. This next slide says from crisis to courage. And I think that I like to use this phrase as another descriptor of like what our work is about. Often we are meeting Somerville renters when they're at some of their most vulnerable moments, when they might be in crisis and they think they're losing their homes. And the work that we try to do is to really, not only build that tenant's confidence and strength to fight back, but also surround them and build the community's support. And it's been very humbling for me to witness my neighbors move in this process from crisis to courage. And I meant to mention at the start that I am also a Somerville renter myself. I reside in East Somerville. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop sharing at least the presentation because I think that's probably the most succinct overview I can give of our work. But, for those of us who don't know CAS, this is really my hope to build more of our partnerships and awareness here in the city, and to again make sure that residents with disabilities know who we are and can refer to us as a resource if they feel that their rights are being violated, or if you might need more specialized case management, perhaps if you're searching and applying for affordable housing, if you're in need of rental assistance or eviction advocacy, and things like that. And the final kind of invitation I will make is that in the community organizing program, we run a monthly virtual meeting for Somerville renters of all backgrounds, called the Somerville Renters Meeting. So it's pretty straightforward. And the purpose of these meetings are to allow renters of many backgrounds to get to know each other and build connections. And especially as the pandemic continues, we really view this as a priority, right? Strengthening our cohesion as a community. The second goal of the meeting is to educate renters about their community resources and rights. Every month, we kind of have a different topic that we present on. And this month will actually be about utilities and how to find financial assistance if you're struggling to pay your bills. And then the third goal of the meeting is to get people excited and empowered to be involved in community change and community organizing. So this month's meeting, we're also going to talk about a new campaign that we're launching around the City of Somerville's free cash allocations. which is the budget surplus, and really trying to mobilize the community to make sure a significant portion is put towards the affordable housing crisis.
So
with
I've never
that,
heard of that before.
yeah, Holly, I had never heard of the term free cash either until last spring. And so, yeah, our staff and our tenant leaders have been working really hard to educate ourselves and educate other neighbors about like what this means and why we should care about it. And so that's been a really exciting process. And this month's renters meeting is actually taking place tomorrow, Wednesday, February 15th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. on Zoom. And these are multilingual meetings. So we always have professional interpretation into from English into Spanish and Portuguese and other languages upon request. And I also want to give a big thank you to Bonnie. She's been a resource as we've been looking to improve our access around cart services and whatnot. And so we don't quite have all of those pieces in order for this meeting tomorrow, but I'm really hoping that by March, we will have cart services available, not only in English, but also these other languages if necessary. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the registration link for the renters meeting in the chat in case anyone's interested, and that should also be in the materials that are part of the follow-up package.
Did a great job describing the images on the slides. I really
No
appreciated
question.
that. Yeah. That was great.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time and opportunity to present. And I apologize again that this wasn't more accessible, but I don't want to take up too much more time, but I would love to answer any questions that folks at the meeting may have before logging off.
I think the most important thing that you did, and then I see we have a couple of hands, was that you were willing to adapt quickly and were able to do just reading those slides makes a huge difference, reading those images to us. So thank you for that. I saw Leon and I saw Bonnie. Leon, do you want to go first?
And just put me in the stack.
And Harriet.
This is Leon. So I have a question, or sort of a two-part question on the sort of housing assistance side of things. How much of what you do is on the crisis, eviction, dealing with issues in someone's existing housing versus helping them with finding suitable housing that they don't yet have? And for that latter specifically, you'd mentioned that side of things was specifically for Somerville residents. For the finding housing side, would that also include someone who, say, had been previously displaced from Somerville, or someone who does not currently live there, but due to family or a job or some other reason has a connection to the city and is trying to move into it and needs help with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for your question, Leon. And so what I was explaining about eviction crisis support and affordable housing search, that's actually all in my colleague's program, the housing advocacy program, but I can speak to it for a moment. So our housing advocacy program actually has a contract with Somerville Office of Housing Stability to do the affordable housing search. So by my understanding, and I would be happy to loop back to the commission for the final details on this. My understanding, though, is the way the contract is set up is that residents do have to prove current Somerville residency for that service. There's also income eligibility guidelines. But in terms of just like how much capacity is kind of given to each thing, our staff in the housing advocacy program are trained to do both roles. And we have some staff who do handle more of the rental assistance and eviction cases. And then other staff, like more of their plate has the affordable housing search as part of their day-to-day work. So it kind of depends on who you talk to. But when you apply, like you fill out the pre-application for HAP as it's known as, you will be like screened and then, assigned to a staff member based on who's available. I will be really transparent in that, given the continued economic fallout from the pandemic, eviction and rental assistance advocacy, it remains top priority for our advocates. And so unfortunately, like I have met tenants who really are in need of more affordable housing or safer and more dignified housing, been on a wait list though longer because like residents facing immediate crisis are higher in the priority. But this is not unusual, unfortunately, in the sector right now. Like I believe OHS has similar wait lists, the Somerville Homeless Coalition as well, and is just like indicative of deeper failures, quite frankly, of our system right now.
I would agree with the description of failures. You
Thank
could
you.
also say it's opportunities to fix things, but that'd be very hopeful. Can be hopeful.
Yes, and that's what the organizing program is really hoping to do. And because what I didn't totally mention is that like many of the tenants who are now our leaders of the program and our campaigns are like former clients within CAS. And so maybe they came to us again in a situation of crisis and really needing that urgent help, but have been able to kind of move into a more empowered position with us and their neighbors to be using their personal experience to challenge and change the system.
That's
Wow.
a great story. Leanne, did you have any other questions or comments?
I know that was it. Thank you.
Okay, just making sure. Miss Dennis, you had your hand up, and then Harriet.
Thanks through the chair. Yeah, I just want to echo the describing the slides. I really appreciate you explaining the images as well as the words on them. I have 3 interrelated access comments. One is, even though you don't have CART for tomorrow's meeting, being on Zoom is a great start. Just make sure that whoever's running the meeting enables automatic live captioning, and that will go a long way. It's free. It's not as good as CART, but it still provides some access. And then the other 2, I was excited to hear that the VITA program is for any Mass resident, but 2 access thoughts on that. One, are you doing accommodations for people who can't do in person? And 2, for people who are doing in person, but have mobility access needs, are you advertising how one actually gets into the building? Because that's different than people without mobility access.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie, so much for just very concisely raising these questions for the renters meeting captioning and then the VITA program. So I actually don't know if we are making special accommodations to do like a hybrid appointment where the volunteer preparer may be on site, but like, yeah, the resident stays at home or on Zoom. I would love to find out though, and I can certainly do that and then loop back to the commission with the answer. And likewise with access to our building. Yeah, if you're familiar, we are located at 66 Union Square, which is the former police building in Union Square, kind of in the plaza where like the Independent and all those other restaurants are.
The
And yeah,
historical original building with the jail in the basement.
Yes, that is the space that we occupy, Holly, and actually some of our administrative suites like have those jail cells, which is very, very interesting. But that being said, yeah, it's not totally clear when you arrive, like how the heck you get in there. And so I really appreciate the suggestion. And I'll also bring that back to CAS's management about how we can make sure those instructions are available.
Yeah. Because it is possible. You go down the alleyway and there's an intercom system and you have to get buzzed in, but knowing that exists, I only know because I was seeing a chiropractor in that building.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Yeah,
And we
and-
do have accessible elevators, but again, yeah,
Yeah.
you'd have to come in all the way through the back. Yeah.
Also, can I just very quickly say thank you? Nicole reached out to me and I connected her with Henry, one of the associate commissioners, and she has been proactively trying to figure out how CAS can work better with people with disabilities, and I super appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Miss Harriet, you have the floor.
Sure. I have a couple of things. I was just curious. In the housing part of CAS, how many staff do you have to distribute around all these deep problems? Excuse me.
Yeah, thanks, Harriet. So our it's I don't have an easy answer for you. I mean, I have a good one though. Our housing and community organizing programs have basically doubled in size in the last 2 to 3 years. And at this moment, I believe our housing advocacy program has 7 staff, and they are hiring for 2 or 3 positions, so not fully staffed. And then the community organizing program that I lead, there are 5 of us, so myself plus 4 community organizers, and we're actively hiring for a 5th.
Excellent, excellent. And then, of course, you work very closely with the housing stability folks, and they have any number of people, right? I don't know how big that office is, but.
Exactly. Yes, you'd have to ask Director Ellen Schachter, but I think she's been in a similar position where OHS began with maybe 5 staff, and throughout the pandemic, the administration's put more money to part-time workers and full-time staff. I think they might be up to at least 10 staff members at this point, yeah, who are assisting with rental assistance applications and other issues.
And then I just have one more thing to offer, which is I have been, as a member of the local chapter of National Adapt, I've been on the Mass Adapt chapter here, and I was invited by one of my fellow members who works with the Boston Tax Coalition. And they too, of course, have the same free tax preparation for the greater Boston area, which I don't know if that includes Somerville, Cambridge or not. I'm not sure about that. But what I worked on with them is a pilot program to assist people with visual impairments. So, you know, I've been there to orient someone who was going to be the staffer, to bring them into the building. It is in person, you know, and just how to gracefully work with people. And I'm so pleased that they are doing it. It is income based, 60,000 or less per year. And I don't know, you might if people have the space to in your program to check in with them. I could say a little bit about it, but it's a good thing to have at some point. And they're only doing it like 4 or 6 Wednesdays in February and March, and people have to make appointments and such like. So just wanted to mention it. So it's something you could pass on that does exist, and hopefully will continue to exist tax year by tax year. Thanks.
We have just about 4 or 5 minutes left. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question or provide a comment back to Nicole? Okay.
Thanks, Harriet, for your questions and comments, and just thank you all again so much for inviting me to be part of this agenda. And it was really just valuable for me to hear all the other conversations and presentations this evening. So much appreciation.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
to join
Nicole.
anytime.
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes. Never had 3 minutes of silence. Anything anyone wants to? Oh, Frank's clapping. I'm opening it up to the floor if anyone has anything they'd like to add, or we could do that magic thing and vote to finish our meeting before 9 o'clock.
Woohoo!
Gonna count to 5 in my head. Anyone? Don't see anyone jumping in to speak, so
This is Leanne. I
Leanne.
do have one thing I wanted to, about the materials that you had sent out,
Sure.
or had linked in the meeting. The bylaw, the current draft of the bylaws that got attached with the meeting materials, doesn't actually say that it's a draft. It's
It's not a
presented as
draft.
if it's the current version, which I don't believe it is the current version, because there's a lot of stuff that we definitely haven't voted on that's in the one that was sent out.
So it should be the current version. Let me just grab it as well.
Because it had some fairly substantial changes, I believe, that are not things that we have voted on.
Can I add one little comment here, since we have just a few seconds, and that would be, this is Harriet, and that would be, we voted on some sections and those are done. And tonight was to deliberate the rest of it, vote on it to make it completely done. That was my understanding, and I could be incorrect, but that's my understanding.
This is supposed to be, and I will double check this, Leanne. This is supposed to be everything that existed and only what we did approve for changes. My computer really is being jerky. Sorry, can't get back to the right screen. And I will double check that visually between the different versions, but I needed to have a document exist as of our last approved bylaws. And then I added to it the dates of the other versions so that we would have that.
I'm trying to compare it to what had previously been approved to make sure it wasn't just it was the updated formatting, and it does look like it is substantially different than the previously approved version, and
But
not
that's-
just of the things that we have approved in the meetings.
So I can go back through that if you have time later this week. If you want to let me know if you want to look at it with me remotely, that's great. If not, I will compare the two. Because I had to take out track changes. I had to produce one again that had everything that was approved in that last meeting. And I took out things that were not, things that were like suggested, but were not voted on. So I had removed all of those.
Okay, I think possibly in the updating it to not be the like 10-year-old upside down badly scanned PDF. Some things may have gotten mixed up about what was a track change and what was a change from the beginning, because this is definitely significantly different than the 2013 version. And so I think probably this version needs to be like marked as a draft, because otherwise it is, I think it's more than just like a couple things that got missed. It's like the whole thing is significantly different.
Well, I will go back and visually look at the different versions and make sure it's accurate. And I will make sure I update the commission on what I find. But thank you for letting me know that it does not look right to you. So I will double check that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bonnie?
Thank you. Yeah, I can say that I scanned it as well, and it's definitely not remotely what was there before. And I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did look through things, and I think Lean's correct. It even includes like commentary on some of the things and some strike through. So I
But
think that there was some issues with
with my
the
version,
documents merging. Yeah.
I will fix that. Thank you. Okay. Well, it was great to have all our guests. It's great to see you, Miss Bonnie. Thank you very much. And I'm going to motion that we end this February 14th Valentine's Day meeting of the commission.
This is Leah, and I will second that motion.
Great. All in favor? Aye. Night, everyone.
Good
Thank you very
night.
much.
Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.